Albert Breer, one of my favorite NFL insiders, NFL reporter, lead content strategist for the Monday Morning Quarterback. And I know that Albert lives vicariously through us. The Traeger grills are fired up, Albert. The grilled Chicago dogs, chili cheese dogs today, bacon-wrapped hot dogs, and tater tots. That's how we do it here on the Dan Patrick Show.
Yeah, not bad. I feel like I almost insulted Perloff when I texted him and I guessed that they were sloppy joes. You guys are way beyond that.
Oh yeah. You should come in on a Friday, a meat Friday. Come on down.
Yeah, you guys aren't too far, so maybe I'll make the trip.
Yeah, that'd be nice. All right. We've been talking about this Tom Brady situation, that the report is that he played on a fully torn MCL the entire season. What are gamblers, so what information should they be getting here? Like, is the NFL going to go after Tampa Bay with this information that's just come out?
It's a fair question because I think we've always known the injury reports have related to gambling, right? Like, I don't think that's been a big secret, although the NFL could never actually say that over the last 30, 40 years, however long it's been since they've done that. But I do think that now that it's out in the open a little bit more and like the league is more free to speak about this stuff. And because they're going to be doing partnerships with casinos, I think I might be mistaken about this. I think a couple teams already have those, like the Caesars partnerships and everything else. Maybe they're going to get a little more serious about it because in the past, I think they've worked with teams on these things and tried to make sure that at least competitively it was equitable from team to team. But now that you're actually, out in the open doing partnerships with gambling companies, and maybe there'll be a little bit of a shift. It'll be interesting to see because I do know, and I can tell you this, flat out, Dan, like Brady doesn't like his injuries being on that report. Like he would do when he was in New England, do whatever it took to make sure that those injuries wouldn't be on the report. And played with ligament damage in his hand in 2013, played with a separated shoulder in 2011. He's played through a lot of stuff. And I know it was always a priority of his to keep that stuff off the injury report and not even like as a team competitive thing, but just to prevent players from going after parts of his body that were banged up.
Yeah, and I understand that, but is Brady keeping that from the Patriots or the Patriots keeping that from the world?
And that's what's so interesting about it too, Dan, is like you look at it and like Brady's almost got his own ecosystem. So like, where most teams, like with most players, it's like the team's trainers, the team's doctors are going to know everything. Brady's sort of got his own like setup, with Alex Guerrero and all the different people that he works with. So he's one of the few players where it's plausible that like maybe they did hide it from the team and maybe, and look, like I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but if you're Brady and your priority is to keep it off the injury report, maybe it makes sense for you to say, Alex and I are going to keep this to ourselves and we're not going to get the Bucs in trouble. We're just going to keep it from them. I think he's one of the few players where it's actually plausible that maybe the trainers and the doctors had a little less knowledge of the injury than you might think.
I just had a tweet from one of our listeners, John in Georgia. Exactly why do bettors have a right to know? Seriously, where does this right come from? Professional sports somehow has an obligation to mitigate a bettor's risk? ? Really? Why? How is that?
I'm like, it goes back like to like when I was a kid. So I don't know if I can even properly answer that, Dan. You might have better insight on it than me. I would say...
Well, they don't want insider trading. You don't want to have somebody tell somebody, and it could really... Let's say you don't know Patrick Mahomes is going to play.
Right.
And you decide to jump on, the Chargers playing Kansas City because Mahomes, is not going to play. That's what they're trying to avoid. Or he's going to play, but he's got an injured toe and he's really
so
limited.
They don't want the money to move based on, somebody like me deciding, okay, I've got the injury information and now I'm going to commodify it, right?
Yes.
Like, and I'm going to turn it into something that I can sell.
Yes.
That makes sense. Like that part makes sense where they wouldn't want that.
Explain to me what's going on with Deshaun Watson from the league's perspective. Can they put him on the commissioner's exempt list?
They can do what they want. I can tell you this, and they went through this a couple of years ago with Tyreek Hill. And I remember the question at the time was, why weren't they putting him on the commissioner's exempt list over the course of the spring? And I think, if I remember right, the Chiefs actually came to an agreement with Tyreek to stay away from their spring workouts because they just wanted to let the legal situation play out. You know, the league's stance on these things is they won't do it until they have to. And what's interesting is because the fine system has changed and because you can't forgive training camp fines anymore, uh, that juncture in the calendar might come sooner now. It might be the start of training camp for them. And so I think what everybody's waiting for is the legal situation to play out. And I think based on the way some of these things have gone over the last few years, really over the last 10 years, I don't know if the league wants to come down with any sort of ruling without there being legal clarity on how all this is going to play out. And so I think my sense is the league would probably try to kick the can down the road as long as the legal situation is still playing out. And the way they kick the can down the road, Dan, is that exempt list, right? Like they put the player on paid leave and they basically push pause on the whole thing. And they've been able to push pause on the whole thing because Deshaun didn't show up in the spring, right? So it wasn't an issue. But now with the training camp reporting date being whatever it is, a week and a half, 2 weeks away, they you would think that they would have to make a decision on whether or not to put him on the exempt list, unless Watson's lawyers can find a way to reach a settlement between now and July 27th.
But then the league is probably going to discipline Deshaun Watson, I'm guessing,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. I mean, I've been asked a lot, like, will he play in 2021? I think there's a possibility and there's a good chance he plays in 2021. I do not think he'll be playing for any team in week one. So I think that this is regardless of what happens in court, because, I think it's gotten to the point where the commissioner can say, you put yourself in a bad spot. And in turn, that put the league in a bad spot. And so you brought negative publicity to the NFL, which is basically the grounds for suspending Ben Roethlisberger in 2010. And so I think, Ben Roethlisberger, if there's a settlement, I think the Ben Roethlisberger case becomes the precedent. And they say, all right, like, we're going to take you off the field for 8 games. And if you hit certain conditions, it goes down to 6, or 6 games. And with certain conditions, it goes down to 4. I think that's probably what we're looking at. And then once you have that clarity, then I think we can start to talk about, when is he going to be traded?
Are you more curious about Deshaun Watson over the next couple of weeks or Aaron Rodgers?
I would say Aaron Rodgers, just because, like, I think that there's a good chance, there's a decent chance that some sort of arrangement is worked out where if we don't have clarity in the legal situation, like, the league is going to find a way to make it so Deshaun Watson doesn't show up in Houston, because I don't think anybody wants what would happen if he showed up there, right? Like, I don't think the league wants it. I don't think Deshaun wants it. I don't think the Texans want it, right? Okay. Whereas with Rodgers, there's a hard date. It's July 27th. He shows up, he doesn't. Like, to me, like, that's the most interesting one. And I think there's a much better chance that Rodgers plays for the Packers in 2021 than Watson plays for the Texans in 2021. But there's obviously a lot that needs to be worked out. And, I think a lot of what needs to be worked out is going to come down to, can you fix the communication issue, at least temporarily, so the Packers, who believe they have a championship roster right now, can have their quarterback back in the short term, in the very least.
What happens on the 27th with Aaron Rodgers? Explain the financial aspect of that. Let's say he doesn't show up.
If he doesn't show up, then they can start fining him $50,000. They're required to start fining him unless there's some sort of extenuating circumstance. They're required to start fining him $50,000 a day. If he misses preseason games, he gets docked more. And the difference this year versus what it was 2 years ago and before that is that those fines cannot be forgiven. And teams in general would almost routinely forgive these fines. Like, you remember Aaron Donald? Like, I think it was 2 full training camps he missed, right? Paid 0 for that, right? Like, he came in, the Rams forgave all the fines, like, no problem. And that was sort of part of the impetus for the owners saying, we're sick of this. Like, teams aren't adhering to this. We can't really use this as a hammer. And so certain owners said, like, let's put it in the CBA that you can't forgive the fines now. So we all have a very real hammer here. And so now, like, the Packers are in this spot where it's like, the Packers and Rodgers are in this spot where if he misses days of camp, they have to fine him, and they can't go back and forgive those fines. Now, there are obviously things you can do. Like, you could build that money back into a contract extension, right? Like, so there are things that you can do, but it definitely, I think, kind of casts a different light on holdouts. And that's why I think, like, what we're going to see with some of these, and the Rodgers is separate for it, like Stephon Gilmore, for example, with the Patriots. I wouldn't be surprised if Stephon Gilmore shows up on July 27th and then says, that torn quad I had last year, not ready. And it's not going to be ready for a little while.
Yeah.
So
it's not going to be ready till a new contract is ready.
Right. It's like instead of a holdout, it's a hold in, you know?
Is Cam Newton still the starter in New England?
So, like, I would say the way New England's program is set up, they'll tell you the spring is set up to focus on fundamentals, on teaching, and on conditioning. That said, what a rookie can accomplish in the spring is he can set up a competition for the summer. And that's what they'll all tell you, is they'll say a rookie can't win a job in the spring, but he can at the very least put himself in the mix. And from everything that I heard over the last 3 months, Mac Jones did that. So Mac Jones has created a situation where he can compete for the job in July and August. Now, is Bill Belichick going to be comfortable going with a rookie quarterback in week 1? Would he be comfortable putting Mac Jones into the spotlight in week 4, where Tom Brady is going to be coming back into Foxborough, which would be a big spot, you know, for a rookie quarterback? I don't care how prepared you are to be in the NFL, and Mac Jones is prepared for the NFL. That's an open question, but I do think, again, like, just based on everything that I've heard, that Mac Jones did enough from a learning standpoint and from an on-field performance standpoint in the spring to set up a competition starting in late July. And I think at the very least, it's going to look like a competition when we get to training camp.
Which LA team is more interesting?
That's a great question. I'm on the Matthew Stafford bandwagon, Dan. Like, I think, like, I think the general public has a much lower opinion of him than people in football have. Like, I think if you talk to scouts, if you talk to coaches, they think this guy is outstanding. Like, and the idea of putting him in Sean McVay's offense, and we can argue about, like, the way the Rams are set up and how they don't have any first round picks until 5 years from now and all that different stuff. But the idea of Sean McVay with Matthew Stafford right now, today, throwing to Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, and having Cam Akers behind him, and on the other side, defense with Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, I think it's fascinating. And so, like, I wouldn't be surprised if Matthew Stafford's the MVP of the league. And so I would give the slight edge to the Rams, but, like, what Brandon Staley's walking into with the Chargers is awfully interesting too. So I think, the first year of that stadium actually able to have fans in it and all the rest of it, and the Super Bowl being there, I think both those teams have a chance to be really, really good. The Rams is Super Bowl contender. I don't think the Chargers are quite there yet, but there's talent on that roster, Dan. It's not just Justin Herbert. It's, Mike Williams and Joey Bosa and Derwin James and young guys like Kenneth Murray. Like, it's a really good team. And so I'd say Rams, legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. Chargers, I think the Chargers may be more of a pain in the ass for the Chiefs than anyone else in their division. Put it that way.
Open invitation. Join us on a Meat Friday there, Albert, okay?
I'm going to try to make it down there. I think it's about a 2-hour drive. Maybe when I'm on my way to New York in the fall. How far are you guys from the train station? Pretty close, right?
Yeah, pretty close. We can pick you up. In fact, you can even make a request of what you want on the menu.
There you go. Yeah. I'm a big smoker guy too. So I gotta hit up Perloff and make sure he sends me pictures of whatever comes out of all of that later today.
Thank you, Albert. As always, have a great weekend.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Have a good one.
That's Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter, Monday Morning Quarterback.